The Birth of a Genius, 1791. On a cold December day in 1791, in the heart of London, a child was born who would one day dream of machines that could think. His name, Charles Babbage. The son of Benjamin Babbage, a wealthy banker, young Charles grew up surrounded by books, curiosity, and privilege. Yet, despite the comfort of his surroundings, his fragile health often kept him away from school. He spent countless hours at home, exploring puzzles, numbers, and mechanical toys. From a young age, he was fascinated by patterns, how gears moved, how clocks ticked, and how numbers never lied. His parents, recognizing his brilliance, hired private tutors. By the time he reached his teens, Charles had already developed an unusual fascination with mathematics and logic. Little did anyone know, this curious boy would one day create the foundation for the world's first programmable computer. The Cambridge years. In 1810, Charles entered Trinity College, Cambridge, a place of intellect and rivalry. But the university's mathematical curriculum frustrated him. It was outdated, filled with ancient theories that ignored modern discoveries. Alongside friends like John Herschel and George Peacock, Babbage formed the Analytical Society, dedicated to reforming British mathematics by introducing continental methods, particularly from Leibniz and Euler. This period became the spark of his rebellion against stagnation. He questioned authority, challenged norms, and believed that knowledge must evolve just as machines do. He graduated with honors, but more importantly, he left Cambridge with a burning idea that mathematics and machinery could work together to solve the problems of human calculation. His dream of a mechanical mind was just beginning to form. The dream of mechanical calculation. The 19th century was a world of manual calculation, slow, error-prone, and tedious. Babbage often studied astronomical tables filled with human mistakes. Why, he asked, should humans do what machines can do better? In 1821, during a discussion with Herschel, he exclaimed in frustration, "I wish to God these calculations had been executed by steam." That moment became a spark, the birth of his greatest vision. He began sketching a machine that could perform mathematical calculations automatically, without error, and faster than any human. This invention would become known as the difference engine. Babbage's mind raced ahead of his time. He imagined not just numbers, but automation, machines that could think, store data, and produce results. His world was about to change forever. The difference engine, a revolution begins. In 1822, Babbage presented his first paper on the difference engine to the Royal Astronomical Society. The idea was revolutionary. A mechanical calculator using gears and levers to compute mathematical functions automatically. The British government was intrigued and granted him £1,500 to build a prototype, an enormous sum for the time. Work began, and Babbage collaborated with skilled engineers and machinists. However, precision engineering in the 1820s was not ready for such complexity. Thousands of handmade parts had to fit perfectly. Costs soared and progress slowed. Despite the setbacks, the partial machine worked. It could compute and print mathematical tables. But critics emerged, funding dwindled, and the government's patience wore thin. Still, Babbage was undeterred. For him, the difference engine was not an end, but a beginning, a stepping stone towards something far greater. Ada Lovelace, the visionary partner. In the 1830s, Charles met Augusta Ada Byron, better known as Ada Lovelace, the brilliant daughter of poet Lord Byron. Ada instantly understood Babbage's ideas, not just as a machine of calculation, but as a machine of creation. She saw poetry in mathematics and imagination in gears. Their friendship became legendary. Ada translated an Italian paper about Babbage's new project, the Analytical engine, and added her own extensive notes that described how the machine could be programmed to perform any operation. In doing so, Ada became the world's first computer programmer. Together, Babbage and Ada envisioned a future where machines could process symbols, play music, and even compose art, ideas that sounded like fantasy in the 19th century but would one day define the modern world. The Analytical engine, birth of the computer. The analytical engine, conceived around 1837, was far ahead of its time. Unlike the difference engine, it was programmable. It used punch cards, memory, and a mill, the mechanical equivalent of a CPU. In essence, it was the blueprint of the modern computer. Babbage described a system where instructions could be changed, data could be stored, and results could be printed, all automatically. But to Victorian England, this was madness. No one truly understood his genius, except Ada. The government refused further funding. The machine was never built during his lifetime, but his designs laid the groundwork for computing principles that would not be rediscovered until a century later by men like Alan Turing. Babbage's imagination had leapt into the 20th century while his body remained trapped in the 1800s. Struggles, criticism, and isolation. By the 1840s, Babbage's relationship with society grew strained. His projects consumed his fortune, and his obsession with perfection alienated engineers and supporters. He fought constantly with the government over money and with machinists over design precision. He became known as difficult, a perfectionist who could not compromise. The press mocked him. His inventions became the butt of jokes. Despite public ridicule, Babbage continued working tirelessly, often alone in his workshop late into the night, surrounded by brass gears and half-built dreams. He once said, "The economy of machinery is the economy of thought." Yet few understood the depth of what he meant. Babbage was no longer merely an inventor. He was a man fighting to prove that the mind could be mechanized. The war on street nuisances. In his later years, Babbage's eccentricities grew. Frustrated by noisy street musicians and disorderly crowds, he began documenting their disturbances in a detailed book of nuisances. He waged personal wars against organ grinders, whom he saw as symbols of chaos disrupting his pursuit of logic. This obsession became public amusement. Newspapers caricatured him as a grumpy old man shouting at children. Yet behind the ridicule was a lonely genius whose dreams had gone unfulfilled. His once great vision of the analytical engine lay incomplete, gathering dust, while the world mocked the man who could have changed it. Still, Babbage found solace in mathematics, continuing to refine his designs in secret. Even in frustration, his mind refused to stop creating. Personal life and tragedy. Babbage's personal life was marked by both love and sorrow. In 1814, he married Georgiana Whitmore, a kind and gentle woman who brought joy to his otherwise analytical world. They had 8 children, though heartbreak followed. Several of them died young, and Georgiana herself passed away in 1827. Her death deeply shattered Charles. For months, he withdrew from society, immersing himself in work to numb the pain. The loss, however, gave him a renewed sense of purpose, to dedicate his genius to humanity. He once wrote, "My mind seems to have become a kind of machine." It was both a confession and a prophecy. The human behind the machine was slowly fading, replaced by a man consumed by the very invention he sought to create. The forgotten genius. By the 1850s, the world had largely forgotten Charles Babbage. His government grants were gone, his supporters dwindled, and his machines lay incomplete. Yet, he continued to write books and improve mechanical designs that would later inspire generations. He lectured on technology, advocated for precision manufacturing, and even proposed concepts like black boxes for trains, ideas centuries ahead of his time. But his work remained unappreciated, and he died without seeing a single one of his great machines completed. History had moved on, but his notebooks, filled with thousands of sketches, equations, and dreams, waited quietly for rediscovery. In those pages lay the architecture of a revolution that the world had not yet caught up to. The death of a visionary. On October 18th, 1871, Charles Babbage passed away at his home in London. He was 79. Few attended his funeral, and even fewer understood the magnitude of his contribution. In his final years, he kept parts of his beloved engines on display, showing visitors the tangible evidence of his life's work. After his death, his brain was preserved, one half displayed at the Science Museum in London, the other kept at the Royal College of Surgeons, as a tribute to the man whose mind had envisioned the machine that would change humanity forever. Charles Babbage left the world quietly, but his ideas would roar to life a century later in the age of computers.